We are on to P5 now, and P5 is about solving equations graphically, numerically, and algebraically. And we're mostly going to focus on the algebraic part in these examples, but we are going to touch upon graphing, and then there's also numerical methods for solving. We're not going to do too much with that, but just know that numerical methods for solving equations basically mean using a table. Like I said, we're not going to do as much of that, but there will be a couple of questions in the assignment that will ask you to use a table. Just look at a table and decide what's the closest thing to a solution. But we're going to have a series of algebraic examples, starting with this one called extracting square roots. So extracting the square roots, what you're going to expect to see is some type of square in there. So it's x plus 1 squared attached to this. Now if we're going to solve this equation, one thing that we need to do first is to get rid of this 4 that's attached to it. We want to isolate the square part. So we're going to divide by 4 on each side. If we do that, we're left with x plus 1 squared equals 4. Now the part that is the extracting square roots, we notice that we have a square here. This side's a perfect square. So if we take the square root of both sides, that's going to help us in our process of solving this equation. The square root of a square is, those two just undo each other, and so we're left with x plus 1. On the other side, it's square root of 4 is 2. But here's a tricky thing about extracting square roots. The fact that is that there's going to be more than one solution to this equation, because if you think about it, and I took a simpler equation, like let's say that I have x squared equals 4. Now there are two ways to make this equation true. So I could do 2 squared, and that's equal to 4, or I could do negative 2 squared, and that's equal to 4. So those are two solutions to it, and we have to keep that in mind here as well. So when you take the square root in an equation, if you introduce it, then you also have to include the plus minus with that one. And so now when we finish out this problem, it's just going to have two different solutions. So I'm going to take then and subtract the 1 from both sides. So subtract the 1, and that means that x is going to be equal to plus or minus 2 minus 1. Now I don't want you to leave it like that. I want you to translate that. Think about it as the positive version first. Plus 2 minus 1. Now that's 1. Then the negative version. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. So then our two solutions to this equation are 1 and negative 3. And you can always check that by plugging it back in. That's a surefire way to tell you, did 1 work? If I plug it back in, make that equation true. So you can do that for both of those.